welcome to Writing from the Inside, Diegetic Narratives. I'm Candy Williams, and I am the lore lead of the Confluence RPG team. And we are going to be talking to you guys about our setting book and how we changed it from sort of the regular style TTRPG setting book into a in-world setting guide. So if we could just go around and introduce ourselves, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren. I'm the editor of Confluence and also helped a lot with some of the early ideation on this project and framing why we decided to do our setting material this way. So I'm really excited to chat with everybody about this and share more about this. So thank you all for coming.
I guess I can do me. We'll go around. Hey, everyone. I'm Viditya. I am a mechanics writer for Confluence. And I'm going to keep it at that. Yeah.
I feel like we need to do you better than that. You're the mechanics writer. You've been on this project for a very long time.
For a very long time.
You're also a professor. You're also the creator of Longsword. There's a bunch of things you've done.
There's a bunch of, yeah. Sorry, it is 2 a.m. I apologize everyone for
Fine, we give you that.
But I can't really quickly say, yeah, I've been on the project for a long time. I've seen its mechanics change very drastically throughout. So as we talk about, the contents of how stuff has changed and how we write it, it's been on that mechanical side as well.
I'll go next. Hi, my name is Shabam. I am the creative lead of this project. I came in, I think about 2 years ago, and initially I was like, what is this world? What is this incredible thing that you're all building? And then I stuck around so long and got so obsessed with it that they were like, hey, maybe you should be sitting there and kind of going, go that way. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just point north and everyone else will vaguely steer the ship better than I will. And so that's kind of what I do. And yeah, very excited to talk to you all. Sin.
Hey, my name is Sin. Or you may know me as Diwata. I am a tabletop RPG game designer, illustrator, and layout artist from the Philippines. I'm currently also a mechanics writer for the incredible Confluence RPG. And I've also worked on other projects that exist somewhere out there in the ether.
Amazing. All right, we have a slideshow for you today to show you some of our layout that we've done already for the book. So we are Confluence, the living archive, and we've been working on this. I think Lauren might have been on this the longest out of the 5 of us here, so probably just about 3 years almost.
Something like that, 3 or 4 at this point.
4 years.
Since before there were any other writers.
Yeah. Amazing. And so we're, it's great news. We've just announced our beta that is launching next month, open beta. So if anybody wants to join in and play, we'll have information for you in the Discord after this. All right. So I just wanted to show you, we've been doing tons of internal playtests. And so we've got an amazing artist, and they've done some really cool graphics for our characters. And just, wanted to give you a little peek at some of the cool lineages that you can play in our game.
Shout out Shan. Shan's one of the core artists behind this. All of this work is by them. Incredible stuff. And we'll definitely talk about why we need incredible art for and what it does later on in the panel.
Yep. And Sin has actually also done some of the art as well for the ephemera and things that we'll be talking about. So yeah. Awesome. All right. So our setting guide. In-World Atlas. First question is, what is a diegetic narrative, and how did this idea come about, and what was the motivation for it?
I'd love to field this one.
Go for it.
So to give everybody a little context about some of our like early joy in our ideation about this was that I kept spamming our threads with like dragonology books, that I was so excited about these ideas, like this idea of interactive texts. So the word diegetic actually comes from film studies. We have diegetic sound and non-diegetic sound. And basically what this refers to is whether or not sound or music exists in the reality of the person. So for example, when you've got diegetic music, that's like, that is happening in the world and your characters are reacting to it. You've got the prom scene at the end of the movie, there's a live band and all of the characters are dancing. That's diegetic. We can point in the moment where in the reality of the movie it's happening. Non-diegetic music is like big orchestral soundtracks in your sweeping fantasy movies. There's not an orchestra on screen, like it's not in the reality, it's not embedded in the world. So we started using this language of diegetic narratives to refer to framing narratives about our world from our world, that everything is actually from actual lived experiences in the world as opposed to an outside observer, or even like more removed from that, just like a fantasy text, right? Like we wanted basically for people to get a hold of this book and have the experience of having bought a book from a used bookstore and discovering that there's so many people who've had their hands on this and that it had a life in true reality before it ever got to them. And that was like a lot of the inspiration behind why we wanted to frame this diegetic narrative style, where all of the stories you're getting from our settings material exist in the world and are being communicated to you from people who live there.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add to that? I know some of you came a little bit later, but
That's pretty comprehensive.
This is-
I
yeah,
think,
absolutely.
yeah, I think that's also why Lauren's our editor, because I would have written the longer version of this, and Lauren would have been like, yeah, but you could say it like that. I'm like, you're right, I could have. So, yeah, no, that's pretty comprehensive.
All right, amazing. All right, next question. So, how does a diegetic approach to setting material affect gameplay? Is the interactive exploration of the world part of the play experience?
Do you want to go for this, VD?
I can start it for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
I don't know, that was like a fun question to design around specifically. Like, I think it's like, okay, well, how does a diegetic text influence kind of mechanics? And actually, I think it took us a lot of time to really hammer it home through, like through playtesting and through figuring it out. Because, you know, it's like we're trying to not what's exactly what I'm trying to say? It's like a lot of role playing games are like you get to put yourself into a world and mold a world yourself, but this is also a lot of like, how do you pull out what's there and work with it in a way that like is reinforced by the mechanics. And so that's like a lot of what we started to think about and build around was like, okay, literally pulling things out of the text, like literally being like, okay, you're gonna find a section in the atlas, and you're gonna put that onto the table. Like you're gonna connect yourself to the people that wrote like you're gonna find the people that wrote stuff in the margins of this book in the gameplay, like at the table, and kind of like experience it that way. To really kind of make the text and reading it mechanical, not just something that you can do and then you sit at the table and it's like only the GM reads the setting and explains it to you. It's like you, the players, are encouraged and pushed towards like digging into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to add to that a little bit, I think one of the things that we were really trying to push for, and when we were writing the mechanics, was to kind of make sure that the experience of playing with the mechanics, like the dice rolls and everything, is flavored so deeply connected to Confluence and to the setting and to the world, and that You are playing as you're playing specific concepts that exist within this world, and so it doesn't. It's like, how do you say it? It's like it's hard to replace it with other things. I guess is an easier way to put it. In
Mm-hmm.
that like these archetypes and these tropes exist in other games, but we wanted to kind of like steep it in the Confluence lore very heavily.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We like, I think that was one of those things where I was talking about like this system has changed a lot,
yeah,
and
it was a huge pivot, I
with
think. Yeah.
each iteration, like it was and you know, like the concept of you can take the system and out of the game, um or like, you know, the setting in the game are different, or you know, like you can, you know, these are just mechanics and these are just setting and like whatever, like we early versions really had them more and more segmented, and every time we kind of hit a roadblock, we're like, yeah, they're not married enough, like they're not, like
Yeah.
we like they're still two separate dishes, like we need to put them both in the same pan still, like, you know, it's every time it was like, oh no, but like, yeah, like this, even like the dice pools, like they're kind of basic and broad, but it's like, okay, but like we need to make sure that like you're always going back to them with something very specific. Like it's always
Mhm.
specific. It needs to be more specific, more specific, more specific. It was like constantly the crawling forward.
Yeah, the goal was basically like, if you play this kind of character in Confluence, you're not supposed to be able to
Yeah.
take that and put them in another game because they exist in Confluence. That
Mhm.
is where they belong, and that's
Mhm.
kind of that was generally the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think, from as somebody who's gotten to play Confluence a lot now, I think one of the great joys of Confluence as a set of mechanics and Confluence as a world is exploring. I think that it's a game that wants you to explore your relationships to other characters, other players at your table, explore your relationships to the world around you, explore consequences for your actions, and also explore the literal world around you. And so I think finding ways to make mechanics feel satisfying as opportunities to explore different experiences in the world, and making the atlas feel like a literal thing that you can explore. Like when you're exploring the atlas, you are, you're venturing into a real lived in world. I keep using that word lived in, but like the atlas is an act of exploration, and we hope that there's a lot of joy to be found in just kind of spending time and finding out secrets, and really like exploring the world around you through mechanics and through setting material.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the main lore bits for Confluence is that people, places, and things actually are pulled from the past and the future into this one time. And so, excuse me. And so having it feel like you are being, like, as a player, are being pulled into the world through this book was just, it just hit the sweet spot. Like once because we, even settings we were talking about, we had kind of gone through a couple of different iterations for the book as well, before we settled on this. And when we settled on this, like the in world being just having that feeling of a player being pulled into the world, for me that hit the sweet spot.
Uh, I think you guys really covered a lot of this. I think one of the other things was, when you when you play a tabletop game, and the GM is tasked with presenting the world to the players, there are two ways that players usually solve for the fact that they should have been someone who's grown up in this fantasy world. One is they kind of figure it out on the spot, and the GM will ask you, "What do you think happened?" And player will come up with something, and the GM will go, "Yeah, that sounds like something that exists in this world. That's what your backstory was." Or alternatively, the GM can write something up beforehand and then pass it to the player. Both of these become like extensive exercises at the table, or very GM heavy, and neither quite have the sense of uh, the world kind of has existed before and after this game. So That's kind of what this allows, is that all the sense of when you pick up the book and you start playing together, you all have something you can pull on, whether you're the story lead or you're the player. There are aspects that will become your character and make you feel like you have a whole history here, because there are other histories hidden beyond the base text, right? The base text which says, for example, if you're looking at the screen right now, Providence Lake, this is what Providence Lake is like. Yeah, okay, cool. But then there's all this ephemera around it that makes you realize what that feels like. And so that's the other part of like making sure, as we keep saying, the world is lived in. So yeah.
All right. Next question. Okay, so how do you go about changing a traditional setting book into a diegetic setting book? What are the benefits of an in-world book? And please, the last 4 slides are all layouts from the book. So if you want to kind of point out stuff from these, you totally can with that answering that question.
Oh, you go ahead.
No, I want to answer the opposite of this later. So you go for this. I'll tell you what the challenges are.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just about.
Now
A
we
little
can.
better. Yeah.
He has like the most magic static tail, and if he walks around the desk, I will get shorted for a second.
Oh no.
I know
Wow.
he's a little monster.
Magical cat.
I know he's amazing. So I'll fix that in a second. But I just want to. So one of the primary ways that we went about building this book, I talked about like it feeling like a book that you got at a used bookstore that other people have laid hands on. And one of the things that we did was by layering different texts and different voices. So in here, you'll find that we have a primary text, which was written by an in-world organization called the Ikari Archive. And their goal is to sort of capture what Confluence, the world of Azuria, is like right now, including the geography, the cities, the countries, the people, the plants and animals there. So we have this sort of like official academic text that runs throughout that you can see as kind of the primary. I'm pointing at my screen like you can see what I'm pointing at, but these sort of like primary paragraphs. But in addition to that, we have also layered in what we have been calling ephemera, which is little bits and pieces that other readers who have had their hands on this over time have added. And this includes doodles. You can see like the little fish and our little goblin guy. You can also find notes from people, and these notes will include like snippets reacting to the way that the Ikari Archive is framing information and whether or not they agree with it. It might have extra mysteries for you to unlock. You might discover that there are love letters being captured in the footnotes. Like there's a lot of other conversations happening within the text layered on top of that primary text. And then on top of that, we have also, in addition to things that people have written directly in the text, you can see here that there's also sort of extra evidences from the world, including ripped out train tickets and letters that have been stuffed into the margins. You'll find like whole tourist brochures for cities that are included in here. So I think the main way that we went about building this was as like layers of text, and that way it feels like it's really bursting at the seams with things for you to discover from a variety of different voices in the world.
Yeah.
Speaking of our slides here, on slide 6 actually, which is I think the slide after this one currently. Yeah. So right on the bottom we can see things like area traits and stuff like that. That is also like one of the things I think that we really built into this game and this system and the setting, in that we have this mechanic, I guess, called area traits that is technically very it's how do we describe area traits? It's like
It's
these are
mechanics
that you
linked-
experience only in a certain area. Yeah, and they're formatted as part of the atlas, but the way they look actually is a callback to what the mechanics book is going to look like. So it's not kind of like, it's like the books are talking to each other almost. That's like another thing that we also wanted to make sure could be kind of perceived through this. And also you get all of the ephemera here, which the intention, as Lauren said, is that these could all be hooks, which is technically also a mechanic, right? Like they're player hooks. You could create an entire mini quest or like a short one shot out of any or all of these, or combine them as you like. And you have the settings text as like kind of like your foundation to create a story out of that. But like the hook, the plot is in the ephemera, and I feel like that's such a cool thing that this team has like worked super hard to integrate.
Yeah, it's
Each
like we to use like kind of examples of other games that we looked at, like for folks who want to like see some other stuff outside of just our own thing, is like we looked at really setting heavy games, or games where like like, you know, we're talking like mechanics are ingrained into the setting itself. Like Blades in the Dark was a big touchdown for us. Spire and Heart by Rowan Rick and Deckard. Like these are games where it's like, oh yeah, like you go to them for the setting, or in Blade's case, it's like, you know, the mechanics are fun, but you look at a Blade's playbook and it's like very dripped in it. But then it's like, how do we then kind of smush what they all do onto each spread was kind of our next step, right? So it's
And in Blades also, like there's a similarity with how when you think of a spider, you immediately think that's a Blades playbook, right?
Yeah.
And in the same kind of way, when we were creating facets, we wanted to be kind of like, oh, when you think of Jelly Blood, you immediately think that's Confluence for sure.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the objective. Like you think of smoke and you think, oh, it's Sulfira magic. It's Confluence stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like, if you want to turn your text into more of like a playful diegetic text, it's like break your sections more, right? Like put mechanics in your settings section, put your setting in your mechanics section, like put all these little breadcrumbs and threads between them.
It's all connected. I'm
It's
sorry.
all connected.
It's all connected. Shabab, you wanted to talk about the opposites.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword, right? When you land up with trying this task and you want to make it feel something that's lived in and feels diegetic, you also have the challenge of something that other books don't have to worry about, where other books can largely talk about like talk to you as if you're a visitor to this world, and you can be like, come see this, and this is the beautiful market and it's full of wonders, and you know, come to the scary place with its spooky people. But if you live there, you don't necessarily go, oh, this, like, because you live there, right? You don't go, this is the scary place with the spooky people. You go like, yeah, that's my neighborhood, they're kind of weird at times. So trying to shift the language so that it felt like it was being written by the people who lived in there was one of the first things you had to figure out. But then there's also the question of, okay, you shift the language, but how do you make it so that the player still feels like there is something fascinating going on? So you have to create these contrasts between what's being said and then sometimes what's being implied, and players will start seeing between the text, right? They'll start seeing the subtext of the place. So for example, this ephemera thing is really good because on one side you have the 10 laws of Delrin, but I think there's a different page, it's probably not pictured over here, which talks about a different faction and their tenets, and both of them coexist in pretty similar places. So you start feeling the tensions that will be there. We don't need to come out and tell you that, hey, they probably lock heads a lot. The text does it for you. And that's a tricky thing to figure out. So we constantly will write something and go, okay, but now is it asking the player to do anything, or is it just stating facts, right? That's one of them. The other thing is you can't really fall into the trap of this kind of voyeur, which like often happens with a lot of settings work, is like this sense of like, I'm looking in, but I'm not really part of this. So how do you explore what it feels like to be affected by these pieces, right? How does it feel to, how will it shape your character to have grown up here is something that needs to come through. And that's been a tricky one to, I think, solve, but I think we've hit a good stride with it. And that's, again, it's about the mechanics, because the mechanics let you evolve your character as you go along, but not in the conventional sense of like you just get stronger. It's about who you are as a person changes. And as that changes, as you travel and explore the world, the game and the mechanics are doing that thing. And I think striking that balance is a very interesting challenge, when you can't just be like, okay, when you get here, you just get this new ability, or when you get this weapon, you just get a new ability, which is what I think is conventionally done, and it's really cool, but it's different, right? So changing that line of thinking. And sorry, the last and third thing is also the format of figuring this out. We went through a few different iterations of how to lay this out, and Chris, who's our layout designer, has done an incredible job. But to come up with this idea of like breaking it up in the sense of governance and trade, or culture and magic and geography, was an interesting solve, because that is how a atlas would be written, and that's what the settings book is, right? It's an atlas. But the moment you do it, you also have the sense of like, it shouldn't feel like just such a voluminous text that is like, hey, inundating you with information, right? So making it so that it's still playable, it was, I think, quite the challenge. But I'm excited where we are now, so hopefully you all will check it out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think one of the greatest challenges that we've had in my cat's here, he has opinions. One of the greatest challenges we had with designing was making things feel actionable, right? Like, it's one thing to give players a big book and say, enjoy, explore, have fun, find your way around, and not really give them any way to move through the world that they feel like they have agency over, or that they feel like they have like stories they get to tell in the world, right? So I think that was something that we really focused a lot on, was like not just filling the world with what felt like real people's stories and real people's reactions to happenings in their lives, but also to make those things feel like actionable items that players could view and go, oh, that's a story, and I want to tell that story, and I want my table to enjoy exploring that. So that I think is the biggest, like, when we're thinking about in-world narratives, when we're thinking about diegetic texts, I think the largest challenge is really, how do you make that feel both natural, organic, and actionable as gameplay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's one of the I guess hard things for this atlas, like the way that we're setting it up and putting it together, is that it contains so much ephemera, so much art, and so that's something like you got to think about for like your art team, right? So there's benefits to the players and everything, but it's like, for something like this, you have to have an amazing art team, and we absolutely do, to be able to put all of this ephemera together for us. This region, the Motley Coast region, which is what our beta materials include, there's a lot more regions in this world, but this region alone has 200 pieces of art. And each region is going to have about 200 pieces of art. So definitely one thing to kind of keep in mind, if this is a way that you're thinking about going with your team, is just to make sure you've got artists that can, that can work with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Jay, big ups to the art team. I mean, like, this is, if you want to try and do something like this by yourself, it's going to be difficult. Or
yeah.
Confluence. Yeah, sorry, Sen, go for it.
Fair. And I feel like another part that like should be considered if you're going to go through this, and especially if you want to create like a full team to work on it, is one big thing that has really helped with the creation of Confluence is how the admin of this team has done such incredible work to keep contexts of all sorts of things that have been written like there. It's hard to look at a document and not know what context this document was made in. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's like, oh goodness, what was the intention behind what we were writing in this part again? Like, and it takes like such a solid team of like admin and like logistics and like coordinators to be like right on top of that. And I am at the mercy of like this team. I don't know. It's just incredible. I don't know how they do it, but like the admin of this team has done incredible work to make sure that everybody is on the same page, that everybody's happy, and that everybody is just like they know how to approach a document, and they know how to kind of like deal with it if they have to, and etc. It's just cool.
Yeah, it's been a huge collaborative effort. Like we have so many great team members who, didn't want to be up at 1 to 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. even, maybe some want to take an afternoon nap depending on where we are. But we have a lot of really wonderful team members who we collaborate with constantly and are in constant conversation and contact with. And I think one of the greatest like joys and the only way to deal with the challenges of taking on this kind of approach is we have to troubleshoot together all the time. We are constantly sending out documents to review with each other. We're constantly working in teams to kind of like, hey, I'm discovering that this is an issue. This isn't playing well for me. This isn't feeling intuitive. I'm not sure how to approach this. We're getting this kind of feedback in play tests. How can we make this like remove some of the like blockers for players as they enter into the world, and like that has been one of the great joys, and I think also the best way to overcome the challenges of trying to create like a dense diegetic piece is that you have to be really willing to fiddle and work collaboratively and brainstorm, and just like piece by piece it falls together, but it does take a lot of fine-tuning with other people.
And can I also say that like one of the more interesting things that I have learned, like one of the skills that I have like learned as being part of this team, is the full spread of what Google Docs can do. the full spread of what Google Docs can do. It's just like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Drop downs in a document? What are you talking about?
Then you can finally put Google Docs expert in your resume as
and mean it and goddamn mean it. Yeah.
I didn't know you could leave this many suggestions and comments in one document. Thanks, Laura.
Oh, no,
Did you know how robust the drop-down system is?
It's incredible.
Sorry.
And I would have never found that out if I wasn't part of this team, and I feel like if I had to figure that out by myself as like a solo writer, for example, because I have made like solo games, right? I feel like if I had to like figure that out on my own, it would just take so much, and I'm just it's great.
I want to add to this, not the Google Docs part, though I agreed with that as well. But you're right about because as Vidhi and you both said, the size of the team also really affects. I lost count of how many people we were at our like widest, but I think close to 15.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, and that's really important because when you look at the size of the game, so for example, if you're doing a very small, like I'm talking 100-page game with just the rules and then a little bit about the world, that's really cool, and that's what a lot of indie games end up being, and that's really nice, right? But then Confluence is trying something very different, where it wants you to have a really comprehensive experience and a robust system that can shrink and also grow to fit the kind of game you want to play, right? It's adaptable and modular like that. That's not a 1-person or even a 5-person gig. It's just too much. It's unrealistic to try to do that. And even if you had like a lot of time, right? Like we said, the mechanics have to go through all these iterations. You need different people to kind of bring in different skill sets. But also the other thing that, and this kind of speaks to writing diegetic stuff. Writing good diegetic stuff requires diverse perspectives. You can't write a in-world experience from just one perspective. and you can write a really nice perspective, and that's just what, but that will be very limited, and that's cool, right? That's one game. But if you want to write something like this, you need let me just shout out people we have people from the UK, we have people from Brazil, we have people from the Philippines, we have people from India, and we have people from the US and Canada. That's a pretty good dance spread across the globe, okay?
Yeah.
And every one of these people get to see what's going on in different parts of the books and give their ideas and input before it gets written into like final draft versions, right? And so we've not only benefited from everyone's different lived experiences, but just insights and interests. Sometimes a writer will come like, oh, I've played this. This is what's cool. And we will see how we can maybe take some inspiration from that. And that really makes the world come alive instead of just being like, for example, if I was the only person writing on this game, it would have become a massive statement on just like anti-capitalism, but that's it. Like, it's really cool to write a game about anti-capitalism, but that can't be the only thing it's about, right? Yeah. And so it's great. We had other people come in and like really kind of investigate these things. And so we are now able to play a romance story, a little pirate adventure. You can do dungeon delving if you want. You can do like just kind of hypnotic dream experiences. I don't know, if you want to take drugs and have a party, that's something that's possible in this world, right? And you've written about what that might feel like. And that diegetic stuff comes from 15 people kind of going, this is what I want to add. So big shout out to the team.
I mean, I don't know if this is like because you probably have other questions that we're going to talk to, but I think like I don't know, to kind of reiterate that and about the process of this game and like trying to take a game text and turn it more diegetic is like, I don't know, like we constantly were like, does this feel colonial? Like, does this feel like, or does this feel weird? Like, are we writing as outsiders or are we writing as insiders? And we brought up earlier the like, how do you make kind of like adventure hooks and living worlds that feel like you're tackling a problem from inside rather than just like, oh, your characters show up to a place that has a problem. Instead, like we kept like a part of our iteration in our design process, both mechanically and setting. Like, again, the marriage of the two was like, how do we get people to be like, you're a part of a community, or you're not just like like adventure tourism, and kind of, you know, like all the different perspectives that we have to write from and look at kind of led to us going, oh, okay, yeah, all right, I think we got it. I think we're getting there, and I think we've kind of figured out that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do one last question. So let's kind of keep comments a little shorter on this one, but what considerations did we need to make for like art and layouts? Like, we, you know, a lot of us are like the writers and things like that, but we did have, you know, a hand in, you know, approving art and layout and stuff and things like that. So from our perspective, what considerations do you think we needed to make for art and layout?
Well, as part of as a member of the art team, one thing that I have like seen and observed in a lot of our meetings. Shout out our team.
Yeah.
I know the art lead is in chat. Hello, Shan.
Oh, hey, Shan.
But,
Hi, Shan, I love you.
But one of the things that the art team is very serious about is like kind of really sticking to like how everything in the Motley Coast has its own like palette, has its own look, style, feel, and all of that stuff. Like down to the paper that looks like paper on ephemera. Like everything is kind of worked out, and everything is kind of you know, you make sure that everything matches, everything makes sense. And then like when we started also doing art for another region entirely, that also changed. Like you can't just make the same style all throughout. So it's rich in the sense that you know, it reflects also the cultures of that place. It reflects the practices, the customs, and I think that was really important. And we tried our best to make sure that that came out. That was a huge consideration for sure. I of course, um, like the clarity also of the text, like accessibility and readability was huge as well. Uh, we're constantly working with like Chris, our layout artist, to be kind of like, uh, oh, does this look okay? Is it too much? Is it too cluttered? And also, like, whenever we get feedback from playtesters who are reading the actual document, we try to make sure that like those comments, thanks to our wonderful like playtesting and QA team, those comments are integrated and they're put into place and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and from a process perspective, like the nitty gritty of it is that actually, as the writers are working through the text, they are really pretty fastidiously marking every piece of ephemera, anything that's going to pop out of the main text. People are having to keep a really strict log of, so that way it can be fed to layout and artists and not be confusing. Like there has to be a lot of pretty clear process and communication about what needs to pop out, what are the hopes for it to look like, what the art is, like what is it supposed to be, what does it say, and so then editing also has to go through and look at each of those pieces, and then before it actually goes to layout, it goes through a pass where we actually mark up the document to be input into the design software that
It's Chris.
Chris uses.
Yes.
I saw your name on screen. That Chris uses so that as they are working on it, they actually know what do the headers look like. Is this a piece of ephemera or is it main text? So we actually spend a lot of time communicating, like kind of on a meta level, to ensure that as it's being given to our artists and as it's then being given to layout, that the expectations and what the intention behind the ephemera is communicated to our team at all levels. So that way you end up, they have a clear vision of what the hope was, and then they can go from there and make something really beautiful themselves.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think we're going to end there with the questions. We can go around one more time, let them know who you are, what you do.
I want Vidhi to start this time.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Vidhi.
Holy shit. Yeah, give me a second attempt at this.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Hey. Well, I've been Vinny Tivaletti. I'll continue to be him after falling asleep. You can find me online.
I hope so.
You can find me online at Vidya Voletti basically everywhere. Like I said, I'm a game designer and games educator, both freelance and so on. I'm a mechanics writer for Confluence, which is very exciting, and I would love for you to play the stuff that we've created. And then also, what is it? A game of mine just got released in physical print, Longsword. Play a game about questing knights. Find it at +1 EXP. Their zine club stuff. So, yeah.
All right.
Well
Lauren?
done.
All right. Hi, everybody. I have been Lauren Maddox, and I will hopefully be Lauren Maddox. Here's my cat, Oats. It's like kind of mean not to like put
Oh.
Yeah, so Oats is here. You can find me everywhere, but particularly on Twitter and Instagram and Tumblr at Lauren is PMad. I'm a professional editor and writer. I work on lots of stuff in lots of different modalities inside and outside of the gaming space. And also I'm a writer, of fiction and personally. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I hope that maybe you got a little inspiration.
All right, Shubham?
Hi, my name is Shubham Mehta. I go by @lore_garden everywhere. And I'm the creative lead on Confluence. I'm also the co-founder of Daisies and Dragons, India's largest TTRPG community. I can usually be found writing something or the other in TTRPGs or video games. That's kind of where I live and thrive. So I'm mostly going to be busy with Confluence, hopefully, because Ajuriak has pulled me in and that will make more sense once you play the game.
Yeah.
So you should play the game. Come do the beta. Come do the beta, as everyone else says it.
Sin.
Hi, my name is Sin. You may know me as Dewata. I am a tabletop RPG game designer, illustrator, and layout artist from the Philippines. I am currently a mechanics writer for Confluence RPG, but I've also worked on several projects like writing for Orbital Blues, Sinauna. I've done layout for various tabletop RPG projects, and I've also put out my own personal games like Navathan's End on itch.io. I am Dewata Manila on Twitter and Diwata MNL on nearly everything else. And yeah, that's it.
All right. And I am Candy Williams. I go by Candy Janine, Jeanne, on most of the things. I'm TikTok, I'm Dicey Amazons. And I am the lore lead for Confluence. Excuse me, allergies are sucking right now. The lore lead for Confluence, also do writing, marketing, QA, all of that stuff for the Confluence. I've done writing for Hit Point Press, some professional playtesting for Incredible Dream Studios. What else? And I also self-publish some games on itch.io as well. And we'll continue self-publishing as well as working for other companies because it's so much fun to work on TTRPGs. Thank you, everybody who joined us for our Diegetic Narratives panel. We will be in the Discord after this, answering
Join
any
the
more questions that you
beta.
have. And yes, join the beta. We'll put the links in the Discord so you can check it out. But it's really cool. You get a free digital copy of the game and playtesting credit. Hey.
Good night, good morning, wherever you are.
Bye.